So it's that time of year. I'm going to tell a very old story with some slight alterations. Edgar Scrooge heard a light knock on the office of his window. He made a show of ignoring it by tapping his old IBM Model M keyboard with renewed intensity, focusing intently on the screen. He threw a quick glance at the window ahead of him, like a mirror in the dark December night, and caught a glimpse of his nephew's reflection. The door opened softly. "Happy holidays, Uncle." "Happy holidays for you, maybe. I'm trying to deliver a project on time, and at this rate, there won't be a holiday," he replied gruffly, his hard features lit only by the Jira chart in front of him. "That's not a very encouraging burn-down chart you've got there. This awful team of mine wouldn't know quality if it hit them in the face. Our issue tracker is as long as the naughty list of goddamn Santa Claus. I'm actually stopping by to invite you to a functional programming meetup tomorrow. Maybe you'll pick up some new ideas that could help." Scrooge pushed his chair out from the desk and spun around. "You think I could learn something from some hipster language that would help with this?" He scoffed. "We're too busy creating value here. We spent half a sprint this year upgrading to Java 8 for no good reason. And I'm certainly not making any more changes until Oracle ends long-term support." His nephew looked mildly nauseous when he spoke the O word. "But Uncle," he protested, "you don't need to change language to improve things. There are lots of good ideas that can be adopted in any language. I've been at this for 30 years, and I've certainly never seen anything useful come out of Camel or Haspel or Lesp or whatever all those silly languages are called. Now leave me alone. I need to fix this null pointer exception." His nephew sighed audibly and turned around. "Well, let me know if you change your mind." Scrooge snorted angrily and turned back at his computer, but was unable to focus. Eventually he gave up, decided to call it a day. He left the office and walked home with heavy snowflakes dancing all around him. The sky, the color of an old television, turned to a dead channel. He was wet and cold, covered in snow when he got home and walked across the yard to his apartment building. As he climbed the stairs while untangling his scarf, a sense of dread came over him. Something was off. Reaching his floor, he found the apartment door unlocked. He hesitated only for a second before entering, and then froze in his tracks as he caught sight of the ghost of Marley. Actually, it wasn't a ghost. That was just the water vapor on his glasses playing a trick on him. Marley, however, was wearing a three-piece suit, which was almost even more scary. "Who are you?" he demanded. "I'm Marley, your former friend and teammate. I remember you and how you left for another job without warning. It's been 5 years and I haven't heard a word from you. We were inseparable for decades and you just left me. The truth is that I didn't leave. I was fired. Someone had to take the fall for all our failed deliverables. And I sacrificed myself. For years I wandered restlessly, unable to find another developer job. Finally, I had to do the unthinkable. I became..." "Don't say it," Scrooge begged him. "I became a manager." Scrooge gasped and found himself involuntarily backing away. My fate may yet become yours. Progress is inevitable. No developer is immune to the fact that best practices change. You have lost your former passion for a craft and stagnated like I did. I'm not abandoning everything and rewriting it in Node.js. Progress isn't about fashion and hype. It's about slowly adopting incremental improvements. To save you from my fate, I've arranged for you to be visited by 3 developers. One will remind you what went wrong in the past. Another will show you what's going wrong now. And a third will give you a taste of what will go wrong in the future. Scrooge entered his home office and found a tall, emaciated man sitting on a chair next to his desk. Weirdly, he had a bowl cut and was wearing a Spice Girls t-shirt. Tell me about the first desktop application he wrote. The man didn't bother to introduce himself. Scrooge figured that he ought to be upset about finding another stranger in his apartment, but unsettled as he was by Marley's dark revelation, decided to play along. It was a drawing program, written in C. Let me show you. He sat down at his computer and started clicking through ancient backup folders, nested several levels deep. How did that go for you? It was a lot of fun to build. It was an incredibly productive few weeks once I got started, and I was very proud of it. It sold a bit initially, but eventually the maintenance became too taxing, and I gave up on it. Why was that? Scrooge found the source code and opened up a file, cbrush.age. I think that was largely why. The entire program state was global, and it was modified from all over. Invariants broke all the time, issues got almost impossible to track down, and so forth. I should have known better. The man in the Spice Girls t-shirt nodded thoughtfully. You weren't in any way unique in that back then. A lot of other programs from that era were written in much the same way. Wolfenstein, Vim, Putty, to name some examples. I think programmers at the time would usually reason that there was no good reason to put anything in a struct and pass it around if they only needed a single instance of it anyway. I think people eventually figured out that it was useful to encapsulate their globals, at least at the file level though. Sure, at least that provides an opportunity to enforce invariants, noted the uninvited guest. I think it was object-oriented programming that finally showed a better path, said Scrooge. It brought us proper encapsulation for the first time. I think you're wrong about that. OOP made a large number out of encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance. But only inheritance was actually a new idea. In hindsight, perhaps not a very good one. Scrooge tightened his grip around the mouse, so his knuckles whitened. Humbug, he explained angrily. Here's from the structure and interpretation of computer programs written in 1986, for instance, said his guest. In programming language jargon, the variable imbalance is said to be encapsulated within the new withdraw procedure. That proves nothing, retorted Scrooge. I bet Lisp code was also littered with global state and broken invariants. But never to the same degree as you'd see in an imperative language. Functional languages always put an emphasis on composability. And you can never have composability with shared state. Imperative languages lacked abstractive power. and hence the problem was much worse. Perhaps, but it was still the OOP that changed it all. That is true to a degree, although I see widespread use of singletons and registries to this day. Not even a really yummy enterprise dependency injection framework can tear a global state from the hands of Java and .NET developers. But the OOP did introduce sufficient abstraction to make the problem apparent, at least. It seems like it also eventually inspired a shift in how C code is written. I rarely see a modern code base that makes extensive use of globals. Rather, there's something like a context struct that gets passed around. True, a lot of modern C code has an almost functional feel to it, being made up of pure functions that operate only on their inputs and returns deterministic output. Although the dancing problem remains in deterministic. The dancing problem. You can never prove without executing a function and observing its effects that it's not going to play a video of Rick Astley. Scrooge snorted angrily. The man leaned back in his seat, locking his finger between the back of his head. Did you ever do any concurrent programming back then? I think I wrote a program for crawling websites and downloading images, probably in an early version of Java. Scrooge went up and down a few other backup directories. Here we go. This worked reasonably well until I tried it on a fast connection. On my home ADSL, it was network bound like I expected, but with faster download speeds, it became CPU bound. Did you ever try doing it in stages, using many workers for downloading the images and fewer for the CPU-intensive part? Yeah, I think I made an attempt. It worked sometimes. It would deadlock in some cases. Other times it just caused silent corruption. I gave up before I got to the bottom of that. There seems to be a lot of locking of shared state going on there, but you had the right idea about queuing. Yeah, much later I read somewhere that you need to minimize shared state to do concurrency successfully. Then Java added native concurrent data structures. Today I would probably use a linked blocking queue to cleanly hand things off as the program progresses, transferring ownership of state so it's only accessible from a single context. Minimal shared state, make the remaining shared state immutable if possible. Done that way, it's almost simple. Sounds a bit like Erlang, 15 or 20 years earlier. Message passing fits beautifully with the functional paradigm, where it was always natural to transform data step by step. In contrast, systems programmers always had the mindset that they had to avoid copying and allocating. So it's probably no wonder that Java only got a good set of concurrency primitives in 2006. Why are everyone ambushing me about functional programming today? In anger, Scrooge struck his fists in his old IBM keyboard. With full force, the desk broke in half. The monitor hit the floor and went black. The keyboard itself didn't get a scratch, although it did leave a sizable mark in the herringbone parquet. Leave now before I get violent, he hissed between his teeth, but the strange man was already gone. He picked up his laptop from the floor and was relieved to see that it had survived the destruction. He carried it with him and walked into the kitchen, only to find another man going through his refrigerator. He had a well-trimmed beard, a beret, and a black vest. Do you have any oat milk? He asked the man. I'm going to make a latte. Scrooge was at this point so desensitized by all the strange events of the day that he didn't make much of finding another stranger in his kitchen. His conservative mind did, however, find the idea of anything other than regular milk in his coffee somewhat offensive, and said as much. Okay, I'll pass then, said the beret man. Tell me about your current project. It's been code complete for weeks, but new issues just keep cropping up. It was admittedly written in a bit of a haste, and I knew that we were accumulating some technical debt. I never expected us to go this long past our deadline. This is existential for a company. We can't afford to miss the Christmas season. Show me an example. Scrooge put up his laptop on the kitchen table and opened the project. This had 3 null pointer exceptions. First, it turned out that list objects return null in certain cases. Later, we found that metadata may sometimes be missing, or sometimes lacking a value for last modified. Eventually, we even found that the key field could be missing. Why aren't you using optional in stream? When used pervasively, it's more difficult to make mistakes than to do it correctly. He leaned down over Scrooge's shoulder and rewrote the function. To be honest, I haven't really updated our coding convention since Java 6. Some junior team members tried to introduce something like that, and I threw it out in code review. That actually looks pretty nice. And don't tell me, I know this came from functional languages. Python and C# are probably responsible for making list processing mainstream, although the idea is as old as Lisp. JavaScript taught people the benefits of closures, and you know something is a must-have when C++, PHP, and Java all had language support within a few years. Optional certainly made the leap directly, though. It seems like monads in general are quite in the vogue at the moment. Gonads. I'm pretty sure you don't have any, at least. The lactose-intolerant man ignored the insult. To take some examples, we've got JavaScript promises. Java now has streams and optional. Scrooge frowned. I thought only exotic languages like Haskell and Scala had monads. As an abstract concept, yes. In Haskell, for instance, you can write a function which does something general with anything that behaves like a monad. Java or JavaScript doesn't allow you to abstract over a concept in that way. But you can still have construct types that are chainable through something like optional flat maps, stream flat map, or promise then. Scrooge stood up and walked over to the window, lost in thought. I always thought that monads was just a fictive concept for keeping Haskell tutorial writers busy. He murmured, maybe we do need to rethink how we do things. He turned around, but the uninvited hipster had disappeared. He felt a bit dizzy and made his way over to the living room, where he sat down heavily in a large leather armchair. It was a bit dusty. He didn't use the room very often, and heavy particles blew across the room. Move your foot, please. I need to clean up after you, said a robotic voice. Scrooge jolted up. He didn't see anyone. I asked you to move your feet, please. Scrooge looked down and saw his Roomba slowly making its way towards him. How can you speak? My software is written in Python, so someone just had to import the AI module. one of your guests helped me out. Okay then. Scrooge sat back down. I hear you've had a change of heart today. Scrooge grumbled. Maybe there are still things worth learning. I wonder what else I should look into. Algebraic data types and pattern matching are quite cool. Functional languages had that for ages, of course, but all the fancy new languages have it. Swift and Rust, for instance. Not sure what that is or how it helps. How often do you find yourself having difficulties due to missed edge cases? Quite frequently. What if the computer could help you cover all those cases? Okay, I can see the benefit of that. What else is coming up? It seems like static typing is hot again. For a long time, all the kids were using PHP, Ruby, and Python, and they all thoroughly believed that you didn't need types to disrupt the world. Now, everyone is using TypeScript, and even Python has type checking. A good type system can catch a lot of problems at compile time. The Roomba got stuck in the carpet and spun around helplessly on the floor. Scrooge made no effort to save it. More than in Java or C#, he asked. Haskell devs have long had the experience that once it compiles, it will oftentimes work correctly. Rust, for instance, is much the same way. TypeScript is also pretty good, actually. What then will remain a problem in the future? A tricky algorithm is always going to be difficult to implement, of course. And there are always going to be misunderstood requirements manifesting as semantic bugs. Also, we are doing some more difficult things now. Asynchronous coding is tricky. I don't think we've fully solved that yet, or that anyone really knows how to yet. The Roomba ran out of battery. Scrooge fell asleep. Postscript. The next day, he called his nephew and went to the Func Prog meetup. He came away convinced that functional programming was slowly winning, and of the value of property-based testing. Later, he decided to write their next project in OCaml. All bugs disappeared, and everyone lived happily ever after.
Thank you very much, Emil. I don't think there's questions, it's obvious. You just need to start programming functional, that's it. All your problems solved, and OCaml will save the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Then, summary, I don't see any more questions. No, there is no questions on this. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for participation. And thank you very much again, Funnel, for allowing us to be here. Very appreciated. We'll be back on the 18th of January next year with more. I think we have a guy coming in and actually presenting PureScript. And he's from Canada. Yes, we have happy people in the audience at least. That will come, and then we'll look for more, and then we try to run one meetup per month again during the next year. So if you have anything you want to present or know someone that should present, please get in touch with me and we'll put them on stage. That's it, folks. Thanks for tonight, and have a nice evening. Goodbye.